Today we are talking how to reframe internal resistance. So if you ever have a dream of sharing your message, of starting a podcast, of launching a business, of promoting yourself online, but you have these thoughts of, I'm being too much, I'm being too pushy, who am I to be doing this? And it just gets in your head and is the most unhelpful thing when you're trying to be brave and put yourself out there. Number one, you're not alone. This happens to almost everyone who does creative work, especially in the beginning or at some point along their journey, especially if it's something that you really care about. And number two, we're going to talk about how to overcome that today, because I have experienced so much of that throughout my journey, writing books and, running this podcast and starting businesses. And so I've had to learn how to navigate it. I'm going to share my best tips and tricks and a process that you can use starting today. Now, if you are interested in this topic, then this is from my brand new book, Shine Bright, which is all about how to discover your message, build confidence sharing, and make the difference you are here to make. So it definitely dives deeper into this topic, but today I thought it would be fun to pull from chapter 6 and give you just the process, a high level, that you can start implementing to help work through some of those gnarlier thoughts that may be holding you back. And what I always like to remember is it's not a selfish thing to share your message. Doing this work, working through these things is actually one of the least selfish things you can do, because on the other side of your message or product or service or business is someone that you're going to be able to help. Someone whose life will be changed from working with you or whatever you create, someone who may be held back right now, but you have a solution for. And so it's actually the most important thing you can do to work through anything that is holding you back, not just for you and who you get to become through that process, but for the other person on the other side who is relying on you to do it and whose life will be improved so much by you taking the time to work through these things. I always like to remember too that maybe there is some reason that this is coming into your awareness or your life now. I have come to believe that things come into our awareness when we are ready to work through and shift them. And so you may have spent your entire life feeling like maybe this wasn't a thing until this moment. And if that's something that now you're aware of and you're able to see clearly, and it's frustrating you because you're not sure how to move through it yet, I like to take heart in that and just know like this is your time. That's why it's coming up for you now. That's why you can see it when you couldn't have before. So don't get frustrated by that. Just know that the reason it's hard is because you are ready to learn what it takes to overcome it, to get to the other side. And if it's been with you your whole life and now you're ready, then welcome. This is your time to finally move through any internal resistance. And here is my 5-step process for doing so. Okay, so as I mentioned, you may have thoughts, and everyone's are a little different, but I found that some of the most common buckets are things like, I'm too much, I'm being pushy, like maybe you sell your product or service, but you're afraid you're posting too much, or you're, being pushy by sharing over and over again and encouraging people to buy. Maybe you're afraid you're not good enough. Maybe the thought is I'll make others feel bad. So maybe you're showing your beautiful life that you've created and helping others do the same. But there's that thought of like, am I making others feel bad by sharing what brings me joy and happiness? Now, all of these, they come up so often. So don't feel like maybe you have another flavor of them. Maybe they fall into one of these buckets. It doesn't matter what the thought is, whether it's those or something else. I'm going to show you how to kind of get through it. So think of the thought. The first thing I like to do, step number 1, is to pinpoint the specific thought. So the way I just did there, where I gave you a very specific few words, one-liner, that was the exact thought. I'll make others feel bad. I'm being too pushy. I'm being too much. I'm not good enough. Whatever the thought is, step number 1 is to pinpoint, to actually write it out, because once you get clear on what it is, you can shift it. Otherwise, it can kind of just feel like this vague anxiety lurking inside of you where you're not sure why you always feel so nervous before going on stage or posting on social media or thinking about launching that business idea you have. And you're like, I don't know, I just always get this feeling of unease around it. But until you name the thought, it's really hard to cut through and actually create something that's a little bit more helpful for you. So I say step number 1, name that specific thought. I'll give you a second to do it, write it down, and then we can work with it, okay? Step number 2 is to ask, where did this come from? Is this something that you heard when you were a kid from a caretaker or a teacher or the other kids on the playground? Is this something that you hear from your own friends or family today? Is this something that you internalized maybe from culture or society, messages about women in business or finances? Is this something from your church or your educational institution? I think it can be really helpful to think about, if we all kind of start out as a blank canvas to some degree, well, maybe where did that come from? Where did a belief like, I'll make others feel bad or I'm being too much? Where did that come from? Where did you start to internalize that? Now, the one caveat here is I'm not always able to pinpoint where something came from. So if you can't, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't still work through it. The next step will help you move forward regardless. But for me, it's been really illuminating to look at a belief and see, oh, that's exactly where it came from. That's where it began, or that's why I still have it today, because I still hear it, from this person or this circle or whatever it may be. So for you, just consider it. Where did this belief come from? And it can be really illuminating and helpful and kind of just encouraging to see this wasn't something that you, made up out of thin air. It's something that someone else told you based on what they believe or what their parents told them or whatever it may be. And somewhere along the way, you just started to believe it and internalize it yourself. The good news is we can work around that and we can rework it into something that supports you. And that's what we'll do next. So step number 1, pinpoint a specific thought. Step number 2, ask, where did this come from? Step number 3, brainstorm. What else could be true? So this one is really interesting because maybe you have believed your whole life that you're not very good at something. And it came from, let's say you believed you were never very good at finances, right? And you heard it from your teacher. You're not very good at math, something like that along the way. Now, you can also consider what else could be true. Actually, okay, so maybe you weren't good at math in first grade, but actually you've been able to pay your bills on time since you've been an adult, or most of the time, right? You've been able to save up for a trip that you wanted to go on. You've maybe even been able to donate to a niece or nephew and support a school project of theirs. Start to think of all the ways that challenge that more negative belief that you have. What else could be true? So maybe you got something far down the line ago that made you believe you were or were not a certain way. But what happens is we start then, if the belief kind of stings, we take it, we start looking for evidence that it could be true, kind of as like a defense mechanism where you're like, someone said this about me, could this be true? And so you start the rest of your life collecting all this evidence for why what they said could be true, instead of doing the more helpful, productive thing, which is you can also start collecting evidence for all the ways in which that is not true, or for ways in which a more empowering belief would support you. So what I challenge you to do is look at that belief that you pinpointed in step 1, and step 3, consider what else could be true, and start to look through your life, through your past, through what's happening now, and look for reasons why that belief may or may not be true, whatever the opposite is. Okay, and that's going to start to build this bank of reasons why you can have more confidence in yourself. It's going to start to weaken the other more limiting belief. So if it's kind of like this table and it has all these sturdy legs built around it of things you've collected for the years of why this belief is so true and so powerful, if you can start to remove those one by one, the table becomes a lot weaker and you don't have as much to stand on with that more limiting belief. Meanwhile, you're over here building your other table of beliefs for why you are amazing and capable and worthy. And that table gets so strong because you're collecting so much evidence to support it and to strengthen. Every piece of evidence is a leg under that table that just reinforces its strength. So think about step number 3, what else could be true? If that is hard for you to grasp or you want to buffer it even more, step number 4 is to reframe. What would you tell your inner child. Or if it's hard for you to think about your inner child, maybe a child. So think about if a child came up to you and said, I really am no good at this thing, or I'm afraid that no one will like what I put out there. What would you tell them? How would you encourage them? How would you tell them that they are so brave for putting themselves out there? That it's always worth going for it instead of wondering what if or having regrets, that they are one of the brave ones for doing it. Even if they could fail, you would be so proud of them for taking a chance. So you could journal on this, or you could do it as a voice memo app on your phone, whatever it is, but that could be something that really helps you kind of cut through. If it's hard to talk to yourself in that way, think about how you would treat a child or a little one and how that's going to make it feel like a little bit more nourishing in your own belief system. So that's number 4. So step number 1, pinpoint specific thought. Step number 2, ask, where did this come from? Step number 3, brainstorm, what else could be true? And step number 4, reframe, what would you tell your inner child? The last step is to choose a new belief. So if you think through all of the beautiful things that you just told yourself, of what else could be true, of what you would say to your inner child or to a child, think about one of those things that really stands out as like the most supportive to you, that you just feel like if that was really true and you could latch on to that belief, that would make a big difference for you. And kind of choose that as your new belief. And maybe you write it down so it's like an affirmation or a mantra, or it's like a sticky note on your computer. I do this all the time when I am trying to rework a belief. And I'll say that sometimes it feels a little aspirational. So sometimes what I see on that sticky note on my computer is my new belief, and I'm like, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm hoping that by looking at it every day and reinforcing it and finding evidence for it, that it will start to feel more true. And you know what? It does. By actually starting to look for evidence for it, you do start to strengthen those neural pathways, you start to strengthen your own belief system. And so eventually that belief that felt a little stretchy but that you wanted to grow into and to adopt does start to feel actually like part of your truth. And so I encourage you to try this and just to use your own self as the best experiment for whether this is true or not. I would say give it a few weeks usually, because if you have built decades of these neural pathways and, reinforcement systems for one way of believing, it's going to take a little bit of time to unwind that and to start to sit with this new other belief. But it should feel inspiring to you. It should feel encouraging. It should kind of redirect that mental chatter or pattern and say, we're not going that way anymore. Here is a new belief and thought to think instead. So if you're used to thinking one thing and it's hard to get out of that loop, what choosing a new belief or affirmation or mantra does is it gives you an automatic thought to replace that less helpful one with. So you're not always brainstorming, rethinking through all these things, and you just have it ready to go. And then sit with it for a while and continue to build your evidence bank and to believe and practice this new belief, because then you will start to collect more experiences, more stories, more quotes, more conversations that reinforce it and make it something that's not like something you're stretching for anymore, but that feels really true for you. So that would be my 5-step process for overcoming internal resistance. Again, I go way more in depth in my book, Shine Bright. So if you're interested, you can find this on Amazon. I narrate the Audible version if you love a good audiobook. So I could just be chatting in your ear, kind of like this. But chapter 6 is overcoming internal resistance. So once you discover your message in the earlier chapters and your perfect fit humans in your platform and you're ready to share, but then you're like, oh no, all these things are coming up, we go into the most common, pesky, unhelpful beliefs. And I use this process for each one of those, and we really break them down. So if you've ever thought, I'm too much, I'm too pushy, I'm not good enough, I'll make others feel bad, every single one of those, we go through this process and we give you a new, better, stronger belief for it. But if you want to apply it on your own and test it out, then definitely here's my 5 steps. Number 1, pinpoint the specific thought. Number 2, ask, where did this come from? Number 3, brainstorm what else could be true. Number 4, reframe, what would you tell your inner child or a child, the little version of you that needed to hear this back then. And step number 5, choose your new belief. All right. So let me know if this is helpful to you. Let me know what belief you are working on. If it's not included, drop it in the comments and I can try and help you navigate it and use this process to figure it out together. And maybe in the comments, you'll see someone else who drops a belief and you can weigh in as well with your experience and lived expertise about how to help them get through it as well. All right. I will talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for being here.